So I take this chance to let me quickly introduce the background of this webinar. So it's an initiative from Regulatory Circle in Tech Views. Me, Jack Wong, and Crystal is the person, like a co-chair, chair, running this Regulatory Circle. And the very exciting news is after we initiate this network with different regulatory people, one of the initiatives is we want to have more education, but we want the teaching from local people. What it means is I want to learn regulatory from Singapore regulatory. I want to learn the European regulatory from people working in Europe, etc., so that we can see the voice directly from the market people like that. So to make it a bit unique, and we try to give a high-level understanding. Of course, if you need more detail, feel free to contact the speaker. And then in the meeting chat, you can also see our very first one, Singapore regulatory framework, sharing as well the YouTube channel at that time. So I think you can refer to the previous recording like that. And today, very happy we invite people to share one of the important market, Europe and UK medical device regulatory framework. And for the team information, with a very good support from a different member, we actually have topics all the way until end of this year already, like Hong Kong, US, Vietnam, Thailand, etc. on the pipeline. So roughly, we will have a webinar every month, nearly. Sometime like this month, we have 2 webinars. Last week, we have an AI one. So today, we have a European one, UK one, etc. So stay tuned, and then we will keep on updating you what webinar topic is coming like that. So without further ado, I pass to Pippa and let you maybe briefly introduce your background and also kick off your section. Thank you, Pippa.
Thank you, everyone, and thank for joining. I know it is a Monday evening, not easy after a weekend. And thank you, Jack and Crystal and Alvin, for giving me this opportunity to come and speak here on EU and UK medical devices regulatory framework. Now, this is a huge topic, but everything started with EU MDR and few years back. And now it's almost followed everywhere on the in the world, but more so there are a lot of nuances within the regulations that needs to be understood. I'll be brief and short, but you can always go back or ask questions later on. I'm available all the time. Okay. So my agenda today would be introduction. I'll give a brief introduction of what we do. Sorry. And then I'll talk about EU and UK medical devices regulatory framework. I'll have 2 case studies, short ones, some practical tips, and then a thank you note. So I'm a physician, as you all know, and I transitioned from my cardiology in a clinical background into pharmaceutical medicine, and in the pharmacovigilance department, which looks after the safety of medicines and medical devices. My company is Symogen Ltd in the UK, Symogen is in India, and of course, Alina here. Which is a startup, which is different from what I do in my other companies. So we are a service provider and strategic consulting company, providing expert advice and strategy to global pharmacovigilance and biotech on delivering better patient outcomes and accelerating regulatory and pharmacovigilance approvals, driving business growth. We have been established in 2007, based in Marlow, about 19 years old company. Now, we have a team of brilliant physicians and scientists and epidemiologists and QA and IT people who we all do the work together, and we have about plus 200 years of experience combined. Now, the experts we are basically have the expertise in pharmacovigilance, pharmacoepidemiology, medical writing, audit inspections, and we are very proud that yeah, FDA has inspected our offices in New Jersey. In 2015, we had no observations, so no 483s, and by the MHRA in England, no critical observations in 2014. So, okay, so that's our background. The objectives of the talk very briefly. I'll clarify EU MDR and UK MDR responsibilities, which help manufacturers, innovators, and regulators understand who's responsible for what across jurisdictions. Why I say this, because earlier when UK was within Europe, and we never when we were not divorced, we used to follow everything a common EU MDR regulations. But after our divorce, UK MDR has slightly different responsibilities, many things overlapping, but EU MDR is the one which the whole world sort of follows. But if you were to position your product in the UK, then you will have to follow the UK MDR responsibilities. Now, we'll also learn some post-market and clinical evidence expectations that are expected from both these regions, EU and UK. We'll explore some 2 cases, real world cases. We'll talk about that and how we should be preparing for regulatory changes, especially in the UK from now onwards. Now, EU and UK regulations post Brexit. Now, what has happened? Earlier, there was only EU MDR regulations, and everyone used to follow that. Since Brexit, EU regulation still is very influential globally. The EU MDR and in vitro IVDR diagnostic regulations remains basically the gold standards for safety and efficacy throughout the world. Most of the worldwide regulatory agencies actually have taken bits and pieces from the EU regulations. So the CE marking under MDR is still required for access to the EU market. Please remember that. And EU regulations emphasize centralized pharmacovigilance, pseudovigilance reporting, and harmonized clinical trial protocols. That is one. Now compare it to the UK regulations. We have a distinct framework, especially this has been made more robust after Brexit. And the UK has introduced basically assimilated law, which was formerly known as retained EU law to maintain continuity, but it is no longer interpreted using EU legal principles from now on, after our Brexit. The MHRA, which is the regulatory body for UK, now operates independently with its own approval pathways and vigilance systems. And the UK has introduced innovative licensing and access pathways, which is called ILAP, and UKCA monitoring marking, which is different through CE marking, which is still temporarily accepted, but by the end of this year, that is also going to go. So please be aware of this. Now, why we need to understand dual regulations, because it is very crucial. If you want to market something in the UK, but you think, oh, EU MDR regulations will more or less work, you might be in for a shock, because there are many different nuances which have completely changed from the EU MDR. Now, especially because of market access, to commercialize your product in both the regions, companies must comply with 2 sets of rules, and non-compliance in either can delay or block the market entry. Now, the regulatory strategy is quite divergent, affects everything from clinical trial design to post-market surveillance and labeling. An innovation pathway, the UK may offer faster approvals through ILAP because that doesn't have a notified body. We are the only country where they will have the MHRA does everything, while the EU provides broader market and helps in optimizing launch strategies. And the legal risk management is misinterpreted through assimilated law or EU directives and can lead to compliance failures, recalls, or legal challenges later on. Now, what happens in EU MDR is managed through notified bodies, which is applicable to all the 27 EU countries, whereas in the UK, MHRA is the sole regulator. I just mentioned before, we do not have any notified bodies. And the UK issues guidances and audits and directly through the approved bodies. Okay, now the dual compliance is necessary for manufacturers both in marketing in both the jurisdictions. And I should emphasize that post-Brexit divergence as an ongoing process and not a one-time change. So there will be many changes coming. This is not the only one-time changes in the UK regulations that is going to come. Now, very swiftly, I will talk about we need to know classifications of the medical devices because you will be surprised in the UK, sorry, more emphasis is put on software as a medical devices and how tightly it is regulated both in EU and under EU and UK frameworks. And then what are the classifications of class 1A, 2A, 2B, and 3 based on risk and invasiveness? And just as a food for thought, all SMAD and AI-based devices fall under the class 2A or 2B category, actually. And so UK and EU both share these classification structures. So there is no divergence yet, and this is going to follow until further ratification of the regulations by the UK later on. Now, these are the main differences, as I mentioned. If you see here, this is on the left-hand side is the EU, and the right-hand side is the UK. So this is a bit of history about how it started. The medical devices were replaced by the Medical Devices Directive, which is the MDD, and the Active Implantable Medical Devices Directive, which came into full force from 2021 May. And in the EU, we have IVDR, in vitro diagnostics products, and this is required for all EU member states and the EEA countries. And this is replaced by the IVDD directive, and it is fully again in force from a year later from the EU MDR, that is from May 26, 2022. Now, the key features in the EU directive is that it is stricter clinical evaluation and post-marketing surveillance is heavily implied in the products which is going to be marketed or approved there. There is a unique device identification number and system which is given. And in the EU, the database is EUDAMED, which is used for transparency. And here, notified body oversight and recertification of legacy devices are done by the notified bodies. So, and that is distributed across all of the 27 countries in the EU. And emphasis on software and AI as a medical device is heavily looked into. So certification in the EU is through CE marking via EU designated notified bodies. Okay. And the market access, it is EU member states and EEA countries. Now you compare that to a huge EU region, 27 countries and all, and then we have a smaller country like UK, which follows the UK MDR 2002. This has been amended based on the former EU directives, and it is now evolving independently. So as I mentioned before, this is there will be heavy changes in the coming years. So please look out for that. So my slides will not probably be applicable, say, by the next year. Yeah. Now UKCA marking. This replaces CE marking, which is in European countries. And then it is required from 1st July 2025. So from this month, this has come in force. Though CE marking is still, you can still temporarily get accepted, because if you fall in that in between time, then it will be taken care of. I mean, you can get away with it. But I don't think after end of July 2025. So from August, I think they would expect in the UK that you follow all the regulations. Okay. Now, what is the MHRA role? Basically, we do not have notified bodies, so only MHRA does everything. Now, it sees the device registration. They look into market surveillance and post-market vigilance. Now, this is also heavily taken care of because of the safety of the devices. Now, designate UK conformity and assessment bodies maintains device database and safety alerts. Now, ILAP is innovative licensing and access pathway, which I mentioned 2-3 slides back. This pathway helps in accelerating access to transformative devices and drug device combinations, basically, because there are many things like, say, for an inhaler would have the device, which is the outer part of it, and inside there will be a canister full of the medical product. So that is a drug device combination, okay, which will, when you press the canister, it is going to send out puffs of the medication to your lungs. So that is how it is. Now, there is a Northern Ireland protocol because Northern Ireland is part of UK. And not the Southern Ireland. So Dublin and all is not there, but Belfast is there. Okay, so just be careful. So NI Northern Ireland is NI, continues to follow EU MDR, IVDR, and CE marking due to the Windsor framework. Windsor framework is all to do with of the goods for passing through and all that, which is come into effect last year. Okay, now very quickly, I would, these are the key differences. So the regulator in EU is the European Commission and notified bodies, in the UK MHRA. And this is just for a quick, visualization for people who are not very familiar with it, but then they can see which is what very quickly. EU has the UDAMID database. In MHRA, we have the MHRA registration portal. And in the CE marking is in the EU, but we have UKCA, but temporarily accepted. But after August, they would expect you to follow the UKCA. Now, in EU, there is not centralized pathway, but in MHRA, they have ILAP for accelerated access. Okay, now software and AI oversight is governed by MDR annexes and MHRA plus future AI specific rules. Okay, and then language in the EU is multilingual. You can say Germany would expect German, and UK will only accept English, but English is the main thing. And I've talked about it, so I'm not going to talk. Now, 2 case studies very quickly. The first case study was regarding the CE marking, and it was a COVID-19 diagnostic class 2B device. Now the timeline, it was developed through CER with limited legacy data, because in COVID, we never expected something like this to happen, and there was no legacy data as such. So it was developed through clinical CER. Now, early engagement with notified body actually helped navigate the classification. And however, there were delays with UDI registration and the UDAMID uploads because of the heavy amount of you know things that were generated. It took a long time, and it was the first thing in the process. Now the challenge was biological equivalence and to legacy comparator, which was not accepted. And the lesson was very strong clinical justification and pre-submission interaction with notified body was the main key. So if you had discussed it well and good with the notified bodies, it became much more easier, and they had suggested many things about how to go on. Now, the other case study, I'll talk about UK CA for as a medical device. Yeah. Now, this was digital CBT app for anxiety and depression. It was a class 2A under rule, where software with therapeutic intent was the main thing, the indication for anxiety and depression. Now, it was registered with the MHRA, but there was heavy scrutiny on cybersecurity and algorithm risk, which were the primary review areas by the MHRA, and MHRA are very good at it. So they focused on that more. And GDPR and NHS data integration required compliance review, because why NHS data? Because these patients would be admitted to mental health hospitals in the NHS. So that's why NHS data integration was required, and GDPR compliance. Now, again, appointed UK responsible person managed the market entry. And the lesson that was learned was that because it was medical software as a medical device in the UK, it was heavily scrutinized for data handling and algorithm changes. So for this, what they did was they, in the first instance, when the company went and spoke to the MHRA, they actually were very clear that they would do heavy scrutiny of how the data was handled and what were the algorithm, and if there would have been any changes, how would they change it and all. So that took a little bit of time, but once they were happy with it, it was approved. So that's how it is. Now, some practical tips for smooth compliance. Yeah, I think for every regulatory, this sort of a project, it is better to start with a gap assessment and compare the documentation against EU MDR and UK MDR requirements. The post-marketing surveillance, which is heavily looked into, labeling, and prioritize updates based on device class and market strategy. That component will also be looked into. Now, you need to structure the technical file and harmonize the technical documentation to meet both EU MDR Annex 2.3 and UK MDR Schedule 3. It's a modular documentation where possible to avoid any duplication. Please be aware of that. Otherwise, they will ask you several questions. And maintain a master regulatory file with region-specific annexes, that is between the CE marking and the UK CA marking. Now, also there has been quick leverage of ISO 13485 as a common QMS quality management system backbone. Please ensure that QMS is certified to that standard, ISO standard of 13485 2016, which is recognized in both EU and in the UK. And what we need to do also is to integrate MDR, medical device regulation specific requirements like UDI and PMS plans into the QMS procedures. Now, QMS procedures in both EU and in the UK are heavily scrutinized, so please be careful about that and include everything. Or if you have doubts, please talk to the notified bodies in Europe and to the MHRA responsible person in MHRA in UK. Sorry. Now, also have a big plan for labeling and packaging. So the design labels to accommodate both CE and UK CA marks and include both EU authorized representative and UK responsible person, that is UK RP. Details were required in those. Please use also QR codes or a digital IFU to streamline multilingual and region-specific content, more so in the EU, because in the UK it will be only English. Okay. I think one of the biggest tips that I can give, and we have been involved in that, is to engage heavily with these notified and approved bodies well before, early, so that you get the advice from them. Once you go and talk to them, have a face-to-face discussion. That is ideal. You can just go up to MHRA, walk into. Of course, for me, it is very easy. I will just walk down and go to Canary Wharf into the MHRA office and set up an appointment and then talk to with them in detail, so that once this is all ratified with them, it becomes much easier for aligning timelines and what is the audit expectations and documentation formats. They will tell you everything. So, and that helps expedite your review cycle and the timelines, because it is coming from them directly and you are just following it. Now, you need to monitor the transition deadlines and grace periods. So for UK, it was CE marking was accepted until 30th of June, because from 1st July, I said that they will start. But I think still, which falls under this side, that side, they might say okay to it. But from August, strictly, they will not accept CE marking documentations. And for legacy CE certificates like MDD, and ensure to meet MDR transition and signed by the notified body, and track MHRA updates and future UK MDR reforms, because this is definitely going to be changing over the past half of the year and then the next year. Please prioritize cybersecurity and AI transparency, because as I mentioned, these are heavily scrutinized, and training data sources, how they have been, what data sources and everything for AI transparency, they will look into it and align with the MDR Annex and MHRA evolving AI guidelines. Now, you should have a cross-functional regulatory team which involves R&D, clinical, legal, and commercial teams in place and for early compliance planning, and assign regional leads to EU and UK to manage submissions and surveillance. Of course, project management is always the backbone of everything. They will look into everything, maintain the timelines, and track the deliverables and the regulatory milestones. Now, with this, I think I will end. As I said, it is a huge topic, and 20 minutes is a bit too small, less, but it is enough to discuss more. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you, Pippa. And I think you cover a lot of topics, and even including different tips as well, and case study. So you really deliver a lot today. Thank you for the sharing. And I see many clapping hands on the screen already. There's one questions in the chat, and feel free to type more questions. One question from Bowie is which market, Europe or UK, easier? I think different people different answer. No correct answer. Only one way. But from your experience, Europe easier or UK easier, like that?
Okay, thank you for this question. Very interesting. I think after, if we were united with Brexit, I think yeah, EU MDR was one and everything would have gone straight. And EU and MDR is now almost more or less the regulations are set in place, whereas UK device regulations are evolving and they are going to be changing. So there will be more scrutiny in MHRA because MHRA is a very, very difficult regulator, regulatory agency. Very, very. So when they come for inspections, they will start with one thing, and instead of going everywhere, they will keep digging and digging. So you have to be very careful with that. And then they will ask you justifications for this. Why did you do this and why didn't you do that? So you have to be prepared with MHRA. EU is also good, but I think because EU regulations, everyone knows because we had more time to the EU regulations. I think it is now becoming much more easier. But please understand when you submit all these documents and everything should be based on the regulations, and it is better to speak to the notified bodies in the EU and with your responsible person in the UK, and never take it easy. That's what I would say. I mean, if we say, oh, this EU is good, we can do that, you will be in for rude surprises sometimes. So I would say just go by the intention that it is difficult because there are a lot of documentation, lot of things, QMS, this, that, everything, post-marketing surveillance, gap analysis. Then if you have a software as a medical device, you have to build up all the algorithms, AI use cases, how you have put in place and all that. So it is not easy, I would say, in both the places. So I cannot really say which is easier, but for me, I think UK is easier because I've been doing that for a long time. But again, because when we were with Europe, we were doing with Europe, so it is okay for us. And because if you know these responsible person and notified bodies, dignitaries, I think have a chat with them and follow their instructions. They will keep on guiding you.
Thank you. I think you're presenting the pros and cons of both systems because different people, different experience. I would say, if I ask an Italian to cook Italian food, of course, easy. But you are in UK, you deal with UK system a lot, of course, maybe easier for you. So I think different company will need to assess their pros and cons accordingly. Like that. Thank you. Thank you for your input. And I'm not sure more question from the team here. You can say something or you can type in the meeting chat.
So I have also included some backup slides, which you'll see after these slides, but then that is just for a quick recap and all that stuff. So I have discussed more or less everything which is there in the backup slides.
Last question, maybe, Pippa.
Yeah.
What is approval time look like according to your experience? Approval time. Europe approval time and UK approval time.
Approval time. So as I said, in the UK, it is much quicker and easier to some extent because you can just go and have a meeting with them and talk to them. And if you follow their advices, it is going to be really very quick because they know
How about 6 months? Can I say 6 months? Yeah, you can get CE mark?
Yeah, 6 months is ideal. You should be getting a CE mark. Maybe those who have some, things to revise and all. If they have some questions to answer and all, then it may linger on to 8 months, but 8 to 9 months, but 6 to 9 months is the ideal time you will get the approval.
6 to 9 months, you're talking about Europe, right?
Yeah, yeah.
How about UK? What's your range?
UK also about 6 to 8 months, because they also take time.
Similar, right?
Yeah, similar, very similar, because now they are transitioning from EU, so they are scrutinizing it more, and UK have more time and energy to scrutinize. As I said, they are very thorough, and they'll do. Not that EU is not thorough. EU is thorough, but they have been doing this for a long time.
Of course, yeah, they have a more established system.
Yes.
Okay, so I think for the interest of time, I pause here because you got the email of Pippa already. And today more for a purpose of giving you a high-level understanding rather than make you suddenly become a Europe or UK expert. But we hope you got some idea now. What's the different system, how it works, etc.